Texans to say this is what we should do, I would be opposed to anybody trying to, you know, grab me from there. I would also be opposed to diversions. Going back to the whole diversions. Well, we have money here, and let's divert money here and use it on other, for other, types of agencies or programs. I think that if it's something that's in the state highway fund, we need to keep it there. If it's utilized for transportation, we need to keep it there. We need to utilize every resource that we have available in transportation in order to continue to fund projects that are important. So when I think a lot of the comparisons on our surplus and deficits or shortfalls, I think we need to make sure that we are cognizant of of the issues and make sure that we're not diverting funds or removing funds from these important propositions that have helped us build infrastructure, and also have, like I mentioned earlier, additional tools that are available so that we can build out infrastructure, so that we can build out, the roads that are important for what is something that is very important to tag, and you all there in Houston, is the commerce and the goods and the services. And I know for us in the Rio Grande Valley, when you look along the border, we have various ports of entry, and we need to have that infrastructure in place to cross a lot. 65% of the produce that comes into the United States crosses through the Far International Bridge. It's a very, very busy bridge, and we have seen that over time that wait times cause a problem. And if we don't have the funding available in order to build out the infrastructure and continue to build out the additional ports of entry that we have, a lot of these businesses that are waiting there on the bridges are losing money. Their drivers are sitting there, they're utilizing diesel, and they cannot get the goods across and then get those trucks back into Mexico to pick up more produce. One of the things that we had implemented was the overweight corridors, and I think that's been extremely helpful by utilizing that. But we also have to look at what type of returns we can get by and fees that we need to utilize to continue the operation and maintenance on these roads, because those are extremely important. Now you have a truck or a company that would, instead of only transporting goods in one truck, now with the overweight permit, they could transport a truck and a half of produce or commerce, things that are important. So I think those are a lot of the issues that we need to look at, and along with prioritizing safety and accessibility for people, collaborating with the leadership and people that are in positions that could help identify that. So I think we have so many things that are important. I know that Mayor Sylvester Turner did sign the Vision Zero executive order, committing to end traffic deaths and serious injuries on Houston streets by 2030. I think that's big. It's something that's important for us, and I believe it's he's done a tremendous job with that. So if we have additional things that we need to look at, I think when you look at Hidalgo County and the Rio Grande Valley, they were kind of pioneers, so to speak, on vehicle registration fees, and you've seen other people kind of jump on and utilize it. I think that's a great tool that we can enable as far as a local option on vehicle registration fees and gas tax as well. I think those things are very, very important. I was part of that legislation in creating that, and then you saw that other communities started trying to implement that. I know Senator Hinojosa, where it generates a large amount of money for our RMA, and has helped out so much. So we just want to make sure that we enact maybe a statewide, now that you're going to see that there is going to be a need for funding transportation and projects, that this may be an additional tool that we can utilize and enact it statewide. We want to encourage surface transportation programs for transit projects. I am a big supporter of transit. I think it's very important. I know I passed legislation down here in the Rio Grande Valley to create our commuter rail and our commuter rail authority, and it's something that I hope to see in the future. Now with COVID, we saw that so many things slowed down.
Right.
Hope once we follow the important physicians that are out there who are telling us the routes to go, and we can solve this issue here in the future, which I have no doubt we will start seeing a lot of these things grow and have an impact on states. So I think we want to evaluate a lot of our funding gaps and over the next 25 years, and our gas tax, and looking at a motor vehicle gas tax, to see what we could implement and making that a local option, but capping it at a certain amount, and then see what we need to do in order to replace that gas tax in the future, especially now that we have a lot more electric vehicles and much more economical vehicles. So those are a few things that I think we're going to be facing. I think those are things that we're looking at. I'm always open to having new innovative ideas, especially for transportation. It's something that I've always enjoyed, and I look forward to working with you all, because you have such an open mind and always looking for ways to improve transportation, not only in Houston but across the state of Texas. So I thank you for all the work you've done, and Andrea, thank you so much for always including me and coming to our office. Our doors are always open for you all. Thank you for being innovators and having that foresight and vision to improve our transportation system, and I'm open to any suggestions you all may have or how we can work together. And at this, I'll entertain any questions for you all.
Great. Well, if you have come in while you've been talking, so you were definitely on point with some of your comments. So we'll go back, since that was one of the more recent things that you talked about, the vehicle registration fee. Barry Goodman with the Goodman Corporation had asked that question before you mentioned it. So can you share? I know that some counties do have that the ability to opt into that, and enacting a statewide bill. Can you share what that looks like? Is it better to do like a bracket bill where only certain counties sign on to it, or do you think that just kind of a statewide opt-in measure is best?
I would love to see a statewide opt-in, and the reason I say statewide opt-in, because now you give everybody the option to do that if they feel they need it. We did it in Hidalgo County. It's generated a lot of money here for our RMA. It's helped us kickstart a lot of projects. It's a good backstop when you're financing projects. I think that when we think about it, I think a whole blanket would be good, because now we have something in place that counties can say, okay, if I need that tool, and we go back to the tools in the toolbox, give the local entities the option and give them the ability to opt in if they like. I think that is extremely important for them. If they need the tool, it's available to them. If not, they don't have to do it. So I hope that answers.
It does. Thank you for that. And it's definitely something that we've, it's not on our top 3 that we've included on our agenda, but it's on there, along with, so vehicle registration and kind of gas tax, just local options in general. Like you said, it's about having the tools in the toolbox. And the other thing that we talked about too is, it's a little bit of a dicier topic, but sales tax is another instance where we don't have the ability, we're capped, right, for sales tax. So even if we wanted to raise it a penny, which if you run the numbers, it's about $800 million a year annually that it would generate for the Houston region. And that could be used for transportation. It could be used for other things, but we don't even have that ability. So that state enabling legislation, which is a broader themed issue of that local control, right? That local versus state control. So we certainly appreciate you supporting the local, just like the localities having the option. is really what it is. It's not a state mandate by any means. It's just, it's giving the flexibility to the local entities. So appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to talk about with regards to gas tax, and more so the gas tax, is in conversations that we've had with some other transportation members of the Senate Transportation Committee, Vice Chairman Kelly Hancock and Vice Chairman Brooks Landgraf too. There was actually a conversation talking about, they didn't, I don't think they actually came out and said it, but vehicle miles traveled was more of the thought, and that we need to switch to that model. And I hear that. I think the concern is that what do we do in the meantime? Because in the meantime, the gas tax is not indexed to inflation. It's not been touched since the 90s. And so I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, that has definitely been a topic of discussion. I don't think, I mean, I think it's a good tool to have, but I don't think that would be something that we could put in place in lieu of the gas tax. I think, it's something to definitely look at, because if you have, my 85-year-old aunt who doesn't drive every day, well, of course, she's not going to be taxed as much as, maybe myself, that I'm driving back and forth and utilizing that. Um, I mean, I think it's an option. I just want to see how we would be able to implement that. And of course, I would not want to use that in lieu of a gas tax. I think we do have to index our gas tax. We haven't raised that in 1995, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it's something that we need to look at and see how we can index that with inflation over time, not do just one huge increase, but at least have some sort of an index for that. And I think the way that we addressed, the electric vehicles is by adding that fee that we had worked on together with you via legislation, kind of tweaking that bill. But I think we would be able to address, both segments on that as well.
Well, and it doesn't seem, honestly, some of the conversations we've had, more the Senate side, I hear so much back and forth about the fact that the alternatively fueled vehicle fee is absolutely on the table. And then I hear, well, no, not this session. And that's firm. And so, I mean, my sense is that it's such an unknown right now that I think to say that anything's off the table is probably not, not the best way to think, because I think we have to really look at everything as we go forward. So I actually felt that certainly right before COVID hit, there was a lot of chatter about electric vehicles and alternatively fueled vehicle fees. And so I just kind of wanted your sense for that. Do you think it absolutely can be part of the conversation?
Absolutely. I think a lot of these alternative means of revenue are going to be a big topic of discussion this session. I mean, especially if we're on in a shortfall and we need to figure out how do we fund transportation, what additional fees are out there, or additional ways to generate revenue. I think we're going to be looking at all of that so that we don't dip into more of our reserves and in funding that, but being able to continue to fund the projects and keep them moving forward and getting them developed and constructed. I think that's the most important thing. And then how do we have those in place for the future, that we can utilize those funds and have it available to us? I think we're going to be seeing all sorts of ideas in generating revenue this session. That's going to be very important, not only for our budget, but on infrastructure and transportation.
Right. I'm going to tip it to Barry Goodman. He's got another question related to transit. We can spotlight his video feed.
Thank you, Andrea. Representative, I appreciate your opinion about the potential statewide increase in registration fees, vehicle registration fees, to generate local funds that can be used to increase mobility projects, but also match state and federal money. And we might want to think about bracketing that bill for mostly the large urbanized areas. I don't know that the rural part of Texas will have much appetite for that type of registration fee increase. But I wanted to talk just briefly about public transportation. As the successive US Census results have increased the urbanization of Texas. What we find is significant inequity between the large metro transit systems that were able to adopt up to a 1% sales tax to support transit, and they did that quite some time ago, which brought everybody pretty much up to the cap. The transit part of that is inhibiting local areas outside of the service area of the principal provider. Say in Houston, for example, Houston Metro has the 1-cent sales tax dedicated to public transit. Everyone else outside of Metro pretty much has maxed out their ability to increase sales tax because they're all at the 8.25 max. There have been efforts over the last 10, 12 years of some areas, Dallas-Fort Worth is one, to exempt the transit sales tax from the cap. And what that would do is give some room for jurisdictions in these large urban areas to actually vote to opt into the transit authority so that they could generate their own contribution of sales tax to the overall sales tax collected for public transit. And that would be a huge advance, because right now the problem is that there's no way for these areas to opt in to the large transit authorities and at the same time have the ability to contribute their fair share because they don't have the ability to tax themselves.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you think?
Go ahead. No, yeah, go ahead with your question. I agree with what you're saying. Go ahead.
Well, that's all. I know the efforts previously have been thwarted by the legislature. I think the problematic is that in general, the legislature has been reluctant to provide local options, give up taxing authority, but then block local initiatives. And I think for those, there may be 8 or 10 metros that charge the sales tax in, of course, the largest urbanized areas, including the El Paso area. But a bill that would provide that room by exempting the transit sales tax from the cap would do a lot to create a balanced transportation system in Texas and enable many of these entities, jurisdictions to join the large transit authorities and create seamless regional transit. We don't have that right now.
And you know, and I'll tell you, back in 2007, when I had a rail authority bill for the Rio Grande Valley, and then this past session, I passed the regional transit authority. A lot of what we are looking at is the funding on utilizing that sales tax. I'm very supportive of that. I think that should be a local option. It should be available to you all. I know down in the Rio Grande Valley, for example, we are capped out at our sales tax, so we can't use any of that money towards transit. So it would be, you know, what we had called before is a busting of the cap to at least go up by, you know, 1%. And then you could do it in phases, but it would allow you to go up 1% on your sales tax. And I think, I mean, I agree with that. I think we need to make sure that we make these types of local options available to our communities, especially when it comes to transit. So if that is something that you know, we would follow again, I would have no problem with it. I think it's something that makes sense, especially during these times that we have seen what has happened because of COVID and the impacts that it has on our economy. So yes, I would be supportive of something like that, and I would like to kind of discuss that a little further and see how it would work and how we could implement it.
I wonder too if you think that it's politically more viable if it's dedicated or it's kind of lined up with just for transit.
Yes.
Right. It's not just this kind of blanket busting the cap, but we're saying actually we're exempting this particular section, you know, sector. Yeah, okay. So that's a great, yeah, we'll definitely follow up on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Andrea, we will need to work with, I think if we can get the large metros
Uh-huh.
on board and their legislative delegation, then
Right.
it
Well,
would
and
be
I thought that San Antonio tried to do something last session similar. I'm not sure. I don't
they
want to, I don't want to speak too broadly, but there was something.
no, Dallas Fort Worth has tried for several sessions, maybe not the
Yeah.
last session.
Right.
But
And I know
think
Dallas Fort Worth in 2007, we tried with my bill and it almost completely killed my whole bill, but we attempted it. And I think it's something that, especially in this climate, we need to continue to think about and see if we could attempt it once again.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
I'm gonna tip it to somebody that you don't know, Representative Martinez, at all. Not a character at all. Mr. T. Wayne.
You know what? I just got a text from you. You better be wearing a nice shirt, T. Wayne. Let me see that.
Right?
Yeah, it's flowery, man. It's the way to go. Thank you very much for thank you very much for your representation and everything that you do for the state of Texas. We really do appreciate it. You know, I'm of the opinion that this session is going to be different than anything we've seen in recent history. I think with COVID, redistricting, and the $20+ billion shortfall that we have, that we're going to see a record number of low record of bills being passed this session. I think hardly anything's going to get through, in my opinion, and especially anything that's going to do with increasing money or increasing funds or taxes because of the high unemployment rate. So I'm more of the stance of we need to protect what we have. And if the next speaker has any sense, they will appoint you as the transportation chair, which we would all appreciate and respect. It's a long time overdue. How would you protect the Prop 1 and Prop 7 when they're going to come to you and say, hey, by 2/3 vote, we want to cut that funding? What other options are you going to say should be cut in the state of Texas to protect the transportation funding?
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's a very good question. I think that's a very, very loaded question. That's good, and and it's a fair question as well. I think first of all, we need to identify the fact that we have so many projects in so many people's districts that would be affected by cutting Prop 1 and Prop 7, and making sure that each member knows that if we would by any chance go after, and you would have members that would try to file that, how it would impact the projects that they have, either that are being constructed or that are in line to be constructed in their projects. So I think first and foremost, we need to identify those projects and let them know that if Prop 1 and Prop 7 are impacted, this is how it impacts you in your district. This is how it would impact your transportation projects and infrastructure that are very important in your district. And that also equates to dollars and cents when you have contractors and people working and jobs. I think it creates a domino effect. So first of all, we need to make sure that that is identified and members understand that. And once we get to that, then we can start talking about, instead of trying to cut and maybe stick our hands into Prop 1 and Prop 7, what are some of the alternative means of funding mechanisms that we can utilize to help impact other programs, other other agencies, and help them as well, but also to where it doesn't impact transportation. And I think the key there is to make sure that every member is going to have a transportation project in their district. Every member would be impacted by some sort of a cut on Proposition 1 and 7. And another thing I would tell them is that, yes, it takes a 2/3 vote, but when you had over 80% of the population that came out and voted in a general election saying we wanted Prop 1 and Prop 7, you would be doing a disservice not only to the state of Texas, but to the constituents that voted for that. So I think identifying that, making sure our members understand that is where we should start. And I don't think I want to say any funding cuts or any attacks on Proposition 1, Proposition 7, and our state highway fund is definitely a non-starter for a lot of members.
Excellent. Well, we already see the effect that it's having on TxDOT, with TxDOT's currently putting several projects on hold. I spoke to one firm the other day that had a $5.5 million, 6 different projects put on hold by TxDOT because they're getting cold feet, wondering if they're going to have enough money to move forward with this new situation and this new climate that we're in. And that's a shame, because nothing's even been happened yet, or the legislation hasn't even spoke, and TxDOT's already getting cold feet.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up.
But thank you very much again for everything that you do for not only the Houston region, but also the great state of Texas. We really do appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, T. Wayne. Appreciate you too as well.
Thanks, T. Wayne. Another thing that the House Transportation Committee does, I know, is one of the committee meetings is all people that have requested naming streets after themselves. Or so I would just say that, TAG is not endorsing T. Wayne Holcomb Boulevard behind him. So just, that's not one of our agenda items. So
well, it already exists.
I was already filing that bill.
I know, right? So thank you, though. Those are great questions. So I do want to, we have another person on that I'm going to tip it to, that is a family member of yours, and just wants to say hello. Got all kinds of people on the call today. So Noel,
yeah. Cousin.
Good morning, cousin.
Hey, morning. How you doing? Man, you look great.
Good,
as always.
Thank you. Yeah, things are going well. Just want to thank you for your continued service to our great state and for all that you do. It's great when you come into a new job and you're around some legislative folks here in Southeast Houston, and they recognize that I've got a cousin who does great service to our state. So had a conversation with Ed Thompson last week, and he thinks so highly of you.
Oh,
even
yes.
though you're in separate parties, but he said you're a great guy and you do great things. And of course, I know he has a great relationship with my dad. But thank you again for your service, and great listening to you this morning and all that you're doing for our state. I know that what you all do as far as transportation here in Houston is very important. As I've got a 1-hour commute each way to work, and I appreciate having the great Beltway to get here every morning.
Well, man, thank you. Well, it's great seeing you. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to have my cousins that, yes, Noel, I am providing service to the state, but you provided service to our country. And as a colonel in the United States Army, and now what you do, I mean, we're very honored. And I'm always honored to say that your family, and you're my cousin, you and Michael, and all of our family, but very, very proud of you, of everything that you've done serving our country as well. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. And actually, so with Memorial Hermann, I know a large issue as it relates to transportation is safety. And we talk about reducing number of deaths on roads, and just what we can do to really focus on safety through our transportation policies and funding. So I have a question from Jay Crosley with Farm City. He's a huge safety advocate. There's an interim charge from the House Transportation Committee on looking at different ways that we can take a lead on ending traffic deaths. And we know that last session, you were the co-author with Representative Israel on, I think it was House Bill 1287. And that was reducing speed limits down to 20 miles per hour. And we've had a lot of calls from our city leaders asking for the same for city streets. It's 35, I think, getting it down to 25. It's the difference between an injury and a fatality. So if you can share your thoughts on safety measures that the House Transportation Committee would seriously be looking at this session, and that if you would also continue to support the reduction in speed limit legislation.
Absolutely. And I think that is an excellent question. And I could tell you that I truly support that. Being a firefighter and a paramedic, also a flight medic for many years, transported a lot of people that were seriously injured in accidents, and flew out many on helicopters. And so many times that you go to these scenes and you see what has occurred, that a lot of that, it could have been prevented. And you can prevent a lot of that, although we may be able to lower speed limits and implement that. A lot of people may not, follow that, but I still think that the ability to do that, and once people understand that speed limits are lowered in these areas, and allowing the locals to make that decision is extremely important. If you have a local community coming and asking for assistance to lower speed limits, it's because they know what's happening within their communities, and we need to give them the ability to do that. So, I think a lot of that is extremely important, and we need to continue to address safety issues, especially on roads. I know a few years ago we passed the texting and driving law that Speaker Craddock at the time, or Dean Craddock, was carrying, and I think it was extremely important, even though some people say may violate my freedom, and but it's a safety concern, and you have so much distracted driving when it comes to individuals out there. Now you have so many gadgets in your vehicle, and the phone is just an additional distraction. So if we can help and be a part of that in funding or any way to address safety concerns, just looking at safety statistics, they've been baffling. In non-COVID times, an average of 10 people die every day on Texas roads. And as of November, Texas has gone a full 20 years with at least one fatality on its roadway every year. So in 2018, we reached over 2,000 fatalities, and this year, we've hit that. And drinking, driving faster, and staying distracted. So we as legislators, as communities, as people that are leaders out there, need to do better in addressing safety. And I believe that's something that we'll continue to push.
Right. And, it was interesting because during COVID, the thought was that the numbers would drop significantly, and they did not. And it was largely due to speed. That's what some of the data had really revealed, was that speed was actually much more the issue. So, so thank you for your leadership and your support of that. I'm going to, I think it's our final question. Jeff Collins wanted to ask a question. I don't know what it's about, so we'll see.
Representative, how are you today?
Hey, Jeff, good to see you.
This is a real easy one to wrap up with. Tell us a little bit about, I guess after Election Day is when the official speaker's race starts. So
Right.
Just tell us a little bit of the mechanics. I'm not going to ask for a prediction because I know a lot of it depends on what happens at Election Day. But tell us a little bit about the mechanics and what's it going to mean to have a new speaker again.
Right. So this would actually be my fourth speaker's race. I think a lot of it, and like you mentioned, is going to be based on election night. If Democrats have a good night on election night, I think you'll see a Democrat speaker. If Republicans have a good night, I think you'll have obviously a Republican speaker. I think either way, you're not really going to see movement, even though you have heard movement of certain people, kind of talking and out meeting with people right now. But I don't think you're seeing anything happen until after election night. Within a week, everything will, people will start filing, and you'll start seeing those names. There's so many dynamics that goes into that, as far as, who has a block of votes that would support them. I think you have, certain blocks and certain groups and certain ideas. And I mean, there is just so many ways that you can piece this together. And a lot of members, we have been talking about it. And what if this person goes here, or this block goes there, and how many do they have? And you'll always hear about a member saying that is going to, or considering to run, do I have a path to get there? Do I get to the 76? Because once you hit 76, that's it. All the numbers start rolling in, and then you've got a new speaker. I think you will see that well into by the end of November, we'll have a chosen speaker by then. A lot of times I've also seen that people that who don't end up becoming speaker. It's usually the ones that kind of wait, take, and start, putting together their, their groups and coming out ahead. But I think, like you said, a lot is going to be determined by the general election on November 3rd, and then you'll start seeing a lot of names pop up by November 4th. Either way, one thing I will tell you is that I've always been a moderate. I'm in the middle as a Democrat, but I don't think you can have a super majority of one party or the other. I think you need to have a good mix to where we can all work together and do what's right for Texas and for Texans as a whole. So by doing that, it doesn't mean you have a super majority of one party or the other. You have a good mixture to where everybody can do what's right for Texas, and the speaker is going to have to lead that way as well to be able to govern here in the state.
Well, I hope you throw your hat in if the Democrats have a good night. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're just going to ask everybody that we're having for these legend learns, and we'll just start to eliminate the possibilities of who's going to run for speaker. Representative Thompson said no. He said he was not planning to run. So want to wrap up. There was one more kind of question / comment that I thought was really just something to keep in mind. And so I do want to say it. We talk a lot about funding for projects and getting the projects out and making sure that we get those delivered and under construction. But there was a comment made that the research also has to be there. And we have to make sure that we continue to fund the research that needs to happen. And that may include another commission that looks at what the funding gaps are. That might include technology research and things like that. So just something to kind of keep in mind as we look forward, that the project delivery is absolutely critical, but all the research that goes into before those projects are even, moving forward, and the planning and all of that is also super important. So I just wanted to make that kind of closing statement. And I didn't know if you had any additional thoughts on that. I know we had the 2030 commission that looked at the funding gaps and ideas. And so I think we're probably due for that. If not this session, certainly the next session to look at that.
Correct. And I think those, any type of technology and research definitely needs to be looked at. And we need to be able to identify those funding gaps, for transportation and for, the state is in general. So yes, definitely. I think that's a good point to make. And I think that's something that we need to really consider doing.
Yeah, well, I don't want to take up any more time for anybody. This has been a great discussion. Thank you, Representative, for your time today. Thank you for your knowledge that you carry every day, and your passion and your support of not just transportation, but many issues that are facing the state. And thank you for, putting up with T. Wayne and his questions.
Always.
And we appreciate you. We certainly look forward to more conversations with you as we get closer to the session and as the session kicks off. And we really appreciate, we feel we have a friend in the house, and we really appreciate that.
Always, yes. And I appreciate that. You guys are great, and you're innovators and, visionaries. And I really appreciate that too. You always have an open door in my office. Even you, T. Wayne, always. All of you do. So please don't ever hesitate to ask if there's something I can do and help with. And great seeing my cousin Noel again. Always refreshing to see family.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, be healthy, and we'll see y'all on Thursday.
Thank you.